With so many people using VS Code these days, we sometimes forget about the Visual Studio IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. Despite supporting only a handful of languages, it still has a lot to offer to people interested in C# or C++. But where and how do you get started? Hi, I'm Victor, and today on Height Above Sea Level, we'll be taking a tour around Visual Studio. Before we get started, if you want to talk more about this kind of thing, be sure to follow me on Twitch at Height Above Sea Level, where I do some live coding sessions as well as try and answer some of your questions as best I can. We'll first need to make sure that you have Visual Studio installed. So head on over to visualstudio.microsoft.com. And over here you'll see three options: Visual Studio for Mac, and Visual Studio Code. If you have a Mac, then you can try Visual Studio for Mac, but this is the one I'll be downloading, Visual Studio. And this comes in three options: Community, 2022, Professional, and Enterprise. Community is the free version and it's free for individual developers, academic users, and open source. Professional and Enterprise are paid. So go ahead and download Community. Click on Community and you should see a download at the bottom of your screen, bottom left of your screen. Click on that. And it will say Visual Studio installer. Do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Go ahead and click yes. And since I already have it installed, it won't have to download or install. So yours is going to take a little bit of time to do that, but just be patient and it should show you this screen. As you can see, I have Visual Studio Community 2022 version installed, but this is what's going to show if you have none of these installed. So there's Enterprise, Professional, and the older versions 2019 that are here as well. So let's say Professional 2022 is the one I wanted to download, so I'd click install. So this, just follow the same step if you have, once you've clicked on the link to download Community 2022. Now you have a couple of options for web and cloud. Let's say ASP.NET if you're a web developer. If you want to do desktop, you can have Xamarin. And if you're in gaming, you can do game development with Unity. And this is exactly the same screen as I have right here in Modify. So what you're going to do is, this is the one you're going to need, .NET desktop development, because we'll be working with a console application. But if you're a web developer, you can go ahead and do ASP.NET web development. And if you're into Unity and game dev, download the game development with Unity, which I do plan on using later on with more videos. So if you're interested in following along with those in the future, you might as well download this game development with Unity. Once you've checked at least .NET desktop development, go ahead and click install while downloading, or download then install, whichever one works for you, and then it will download and it'll be ready. So once all that is done and you have a shortcut like I do down here, click on that and Microsoft Visual Studio 2022 should show up like this. And so this is the first thing that you'll see. It might ask you to sign into your Microsoft account, which if you want to, you can feel free to go ahead and do that. But once all that is set up, this is what you should see. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new project and we're going to create a console application. So as you can see, I have it here because I used it recently, but if you don't have it recently, you can come over here and type console and it should give you the options down here. So console app, this is the one we're using, .NET Core, because that's the latest version. And make sure it's this green C# because we'll be writing this in C#. This is Visual Basic and it's a console app, but this is not what we'll be using. We'll be using C#. So with this selected, click next. And this is where we'll name the app. So we can call it My First App. And a little bit of insight is that a little bit of helpful information is don't put spaces, because if you do this, Visual Studio will automatically just put underscores for you like this. So this is what it's going to look like. If you like the underscores, you can do it that way, but I prefer to use this format called Pascal case, where the first letter of every word is capitalized. And if you Not familiar with Pascal case and camel case, I have a video up as well called Naming Conventions Every Programmer Should Know that you can check out, and it should bring you up to speed. So check it out if you have time. But moving on, you've called it my first application or my first app. This is where it's going to be saved. You can see it in your C drive. For me, it's C drive, users, Victor, source, repos. And this is the solution name. Solution is just a container for your projects, and your projects are where you write your code. You can leave this unchecked, go to next. And this is .NET 6. So there are other versions of .NET like .NET 5, .NET Framework, .NET Standard, and so on and so forth. But .NET 6 is the latest version. And as you can see, it has long-term support. So this is the one we're going to be using, but there are previous versions, just so you know. And I think you can find them in Visual Studio 2019, but this is the one we'll be using. Once that is checked, and as you can see, .NET Core, C#, Linux, Mac, Windows, so it's multi-platform. Click Create, and just give it a second or two. And here we are. So this is Visual Studio running. This is the console write line, hello world. It writes hello world to the console. And we'll look at that in a second. So before we do that, in previous versions, you may have seen something like this, like a class called program, like that. And then you had a static void main like this, then maybe string array, and then something like this, args. So this is the old version of doing it. Not of doing it, but how the older .NET versions, the template looked like. It had this program class and this method called main. That main method is the entry point for every application, even console applications. So, and all the code that you need to write in a console application would go in here. But since this is .NET 6, they went ahead and made it so that anything you write in this space is as if it's being written inside here. So it's all going into the main method. And that's why we don't have it. If you want to learn more about that, you can press left control and then left click, or any control, and press control and left click, and that'll take you to this explanation. All right, but as you've noticed, some of my colors may look a bit different from yours, and that's because I'm using a custom theme. I call it the Sakura theme, and I made this because I like the colors, and it is available for patrons on Patreon. Once I have that set up, the link will be in the description below. So if you wanted this theme, then I will have that available for patrons. And yeah, if you like it, let me know in the comments below. Now moving on, let's take a look at Visual Studio. So we'll start with the navbar up top, right here. So most of these work just like in other programs that you've used before, like File, New. Let's say in Microsoft Word, you've done this before. You're making a Word document. You can say File, New Word document. But for Visual Studio, you can say New Project, just like we did before. A new repository. A repository is a place where you store your code, and it can be local. It can be online in a place like GitHub. And then you can open a project or solution, a particular folder with code, files. You can clone a repository. Cloning a repository is making a clone of a collection of your code, whether that's online or locally. But most of the time people use this online. You can add a new project. These are self-explanatory. Close, save, like when you're saving your work so you don't lose it. Print, exit, closing it, recent files you just opened. File is pretty much self-explanatory. Edit, you can undo. Control Z is the same. You can go to another file, a number in the code, a line number in the code. You can find and replace just like you did in regular programs. Cut, copy, paste, duplicate, delete, and all the shortcuts are here on the right side. So if you ever forget or you want to move a little bit faster, you can use these shortcuts. Go to advanced, bookmarks, outlining. These are things you won't use so much, but I'm just letting you know now, just so I can build a little bit of a foundation and get you started. Now view, this is where if you ever forget or if you ever accidentally close one of the windows, just come here and search for it. An example of a window is this right here to my right. the Solution Explorer. Let's say I opened a project and this was missing. Let me not close it. There we go. So I'll be like, where's the Solution Explorer? It's not there. So I come up here, View, Solution Explorer. There we go. This is where most of your files, your folders, and your classes will go. Like you see this program class that you have here. I can save that for a second and then open it again. There it is. So if you want to see a window, this is where you go. If let's say you're working with database, SQL Server, Object Explorer, there it is. You can close it. I can find it here. Again, any window, the terminal, the Team Explorer, but the thing you'll be working with the most is the Solution Explorer. And as you progress, you'll work with Git changes, repository, but that's for later on. This is just an introduction. And speaking of Git, here's a Git window if you want to look at the repository. Again, repository is where your code is stored. It's like a collection of where you store your code. If you want to do that online or locally, and if you have any local repositories, that means it's saved on your computer, not online. Like these are the ones I have. Or you can commit, means making a change and saying that I'm ready to add this to my code. But this is, you don't need to worry about this for now, but just have it in the back of your mind that this is where your repository will be under this Git window project. You can add a class this way, add a new item. A new item is just an ambiguous way of saying maybe you want to add a class, maybe you want to add a controller if you're working with web development, or if you want to add something else. So item is just ambiguous. You can show all files, you can create a new folder, edit a project file. You can look at the properties of this project. And that's all. Anything related to this project right here, you can find inside this project window. Build. When you want to build a solution, you can come here, or you can just press Ctrl-Shift-B. Building a solution is like telling the computer, hey, I've written some code and I want you to look over it. So I want you to run this code. So once it builds, it will look at all the lines of code and it will say, if it's perfect, if it's okay, it will say, okay, the build succeeded. But if the errors, it will say, excuse me, there's an error over here, there's something wrong over here, and I need you to look at that before I can continue execution. So please change it. And anything related to that, errors, warnings, you'll find that in the build. And you can also rebuild. Most of these you won't use that often, so build is the one that you should remember. Debug, like the name suggests, this is for when you're looking for the bugs in your code. Maybe you had a typo or you missed a semicolon. You can come over here to debug. You can start debugging if you press F5. And what this does is when you're debugging, once you can put breakpoints. Breakpoints are just places in your code where you want the code to stop execution. So you can study the variables such as the number, the state, or what have you, or the errors. So if you put breakpoints like this, maybe I can show you if you press F9, this is a breakpoint. So if there was code above this, it will execute, but it will stop right here. And then I can inspect what's going on over here. And you can also remove the breakpoint with F9 again. And back to debug again. You can start without debugging, which is almost like you're just starting the application to see how it works. The same way you can open an app on your phone, or you can start a game. That's you're starting it without debugging. You also test the Unity profiler. The performance profiler is where if you want to look at where the bottlenecks in your application, like you've written some code and it's running a bit slower on some places and it's running better on the other, you can use the profiler to see where those errors or those slow areas are and what you want to do with that information once you know what's the problem. Stepping into and stepping over is when you want to manually execute the next line of code. Stepping into is like you're going into a code block to see more about it, where it's defined, and what are the other variables it uses and options as well. Test. If you want to test is for unit tests. So unit tests is code you write to test your code. If you've written some code to test your code, this is where the test will show up. But we're not doing anything with tests, but if you do so in future, this is where it is. Analyze, I haven't used analyze so much. You can code cleanup. I think it's just like refactoring the code where it can, but I've never used it that much. Tools is where you go to change your options. Like if you can change your theme over here. Speaking of themes again, mine is called the Sakura one. You can change, you go to options. Options, you can look at fonts and colors. You can look at extensions. You can look at keyboard shortcuts. Anything you want to customize, just go to tools, then options, and you'll find it. Extensions are like small programs that you can use with Visual Studio 2022 or any other version of Visual Studio to make things a little bit easier. Like let's say there was an extension that every time you do an opening bracket, it types the closing bracket for you. That's built into Visual Studio, but let's just assume maybe there's something like that, or maybe if you want to write, like you can see this is a IntelliCode. If it says it's predicting that I want to write console.writeLine, and what I'm doing is I'm pressing tab. Like I type console, I press tab like it shows me twice, and that's written for me. Let's say that could be an extension. So you can find those here. Window again, self-explanatory. If you want to split the window, you can have it like this with top and bottom, or you can remove the split. You won't really use this too much, or you can pin the tab like this. Click here, you pin the tab and unpin it. Help is if you need help. All right. I hope that I'm not going too fast, but if I am, let me know. Well, let me know in the comments below if this is helping and if I need to slow down in future videos. But if I'm doing okay, let me know in the comments below as well. All right, let's go over to the Solution Explorer. Now, this is where most of your classes will be. Like we have a program class, and remember, class is just where you store your code. All the connected code is stored inside a class, and a class is like the building block of each application. So this is where your project is, the code, like the program class, which you use to write things on the console, which we're going to do just now. So if you press Control and F5, remember, to run the application without debugging, it will write on the console, hello world. So let's try that. Control plus F5. See what will show on the console. So this is the console right here. As you can see, hello world, and that's what's up here. You can go to the console again. There it is. And you can change this to anything like hello sir. Control and F5 to run the application. Shows hello sir. And I can say hello madam, and I can duplicate this with Control plus D. First need to highlight it like that. Control plus D duplicates the line. Press enter just to make things cleaner. Then I have hello sir, hello madam, hello sir. Then I can duplicate one more time to hello there. Control and F5 to run the application. And here you are, your first application is written on the console. Hello madam, hello sir, hello there. There you have it. You've written your first application. Now you know, let me add hello world, just so we can have the world-renowned phrase. Hello world. There you have it. That's your first application and a little bit of insight on Visual Studio. That's all I had for you guys. Let me know what you think. Have you written code before? Why are you learning to write code? And what's your inspiration from learning to program? Do you like Visual Studio over VS Code if you've been programming before? Or do you have no preference? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitch if you want to talk more about this kind of thing, live and stream. And if that doesn't work, come hang out on Discord. Just click the link in the description below and become a member of the Water Tribe today. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, from me to you, deuces.